What am I talking about? In Hebrews chapter 1 verse 1. Put it up for me. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 1. God. Now in the original manuscript, if you grab hold of the Greek lexicon, that word God does not exist there. Because in the Old Testament, God didn't talk to them. They couldn't handle God. God couldn't commune with them. God is a spirit. They were ordinary men. The spirit cannot communicate with ordinary men. So God couldn't communicate with men. So in the original manuscript, the word God does not exist. What you have there is, in diverse manners and at sundry times, the prophets spoke to the fathers. That's the way you find in the original lexicon, the Greek lexicon. It is in diverse time, at sundry times, or diverse manners, sundry times, the prophets spoke to the fathers. The prophets spoke. The prophets are not speaking. The prophets spoke. The prophets spoke. Are you in the house? Next verse. But in these last days, he had spoken unto us by, in the original is by and in his son. By and in his son. That's to say, in these last days, God is no more speaking. He spoke his last word. The last word of God was Christ. The appearance of Christ was the climax of revelation. I don't know if I'm talking here. So he is speaking. He spoke. He is speaking today by and in his son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. So in the New Testament, we don't look for prophets to give us direction. God took it from prophets. It's no more the exclusive right of prophets to see visions. It's no more the exclusive right of prophets to prophesy. Somebody say, where did you get that from? In the prophecy, Joel chapter 2 verse 28. It shall come to pass in the last days, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your young men shall see visions. So in these last days, it is not prophets that prophesy. It is all of us that prophesy. In these last days, I don't need a prophet to tell me a vision. No, me too, I see visions. I don't know if I'm talking to somebody. Now sit down, let's talk. Sit down, let's talk. In the Old Testament, prophets were called seers, but it ended with Malachi. In these last days, prophets are not seers, because the prophetic office of the Old Testament is different from the prophetic office of the New Testament. They are not the same. Bayonakata. In the New Testament, the prophetic office is a byproduct of his resurrection. Because in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 9, 10, 11, it says, he that descended is he that ascended. And when he ascended, when he rose, he gave gifts to men, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. The fivefold or fourfold, is actually fourfold ministry, was given to the church by reason of his resurrection. Why? For the perfecting of the saints, not for prophecy. The prophet of the New Testament is not supposed to be prophesying. He's supposed to be perfecting you. How do you get perfected? By teaching. Listen, the job of the New Testament prophet is to teach you the scriptures, so that when you are taught, you will do the work of ministry for the perfecting of the saints. Then the saints will do the work of ministry. We are not the ones to do work of ministry. You are to do work of ministry. Our job is to coach you. We are coaches. We coach you And then you go out on Monday to your office, you see vision. In your office, you prophesy. In your place of work, you manifest. Why? You come back to church, we refuel you. You go out to the world, you do work of. I don't know if I'm talking to somebody. If you're hearing, shout, I hear, I hear. That's why he said he spoke. Now, does it mean God doesn't speak through prophets anymore? He does, but not majorly. Why not majorly? They that are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. My sheep hear my voice. So every child of God ought to hear the voice of God for himself. Every child of God ought to see visions. Every child of God ought to prophesy. One day they said to Moses, we saw some people prophesying that are not part of the camp. Moses said, my prayer is that everybody should prophesy. Listen, there's nothing big about prophecy. It's just that you have not been trained. Otherwise everybody here can prophesy. Even children can prophesy. It's already in you. It's just for you to know so you can let it out. Out of your belly shall flow rivers of living. I feel like I'm preaching. If you're catching my flow, shout, I hear, I hear. Sit down, cross your legs, shout, I am in charge. It is lack of teaching. It's lack of training. That's why Christians are running around looking for who to prophesy to them. You don't need to run around. Even if you can't hear prophecy, you have the scriptures. No prophecy is superior to the Bible. Oh, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So if you have the testimony of Jesus, the spirit of prophecy is inside you. What's the testimony of Jesus? The scriptures. For they testify of me. So the scriptures are the testimony of Jesus. And when you have the scriptures, you have the spirit of prophecy. So based on what you read in the scriptures, you can stand up and prophesy. And it will come to pass, because no word of God is void of power to manifest. Somebody shout, I hear. Let me ask you a question. If you have a house boy and you have your son in the house, do you send your house boy to be instructing your son? Every time, house boy, tell my son to eat. House boy, tell my son to sleep. House boy, tell my son to do assignments. No, you don't. Rather, you instruct your son to instruct the house boy. Son, tell him to clean the house. Son, because it is the place of the son to operate on behalf of the father. The father doesn't talk to servants to talk to sons. The father talks to sons to talk to servants. You are a son of God. God will not look for a prophet to talk to you. He lives inside you. He talks to you directly. Am I talking to somebody? If you're hearing, shout, I hear you. Sit down, let me push it a little more. So he hath in these last days spoken to us in and by his son, whom he hath appointed lawful owner of everything. That's the way the J.B. Phillips translation puts it. He's the heir of all things. The J.B. Phillips calls him the lawful owner of everything. Lawful owner. So the epistles therefore are the climax of revelation, or the epistles are what we call the rightly divided word of truth. How do we know that? 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 10. Put it up. God punished the devil. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 10. Watch this. Of which salvation the prophets have inquired. So the Old Testament prophets were inquirers.